When I first met Daniel, the rain had just started. It wasn't the kind of heavy rain that makes you run for cover. No, it was soft, gentle, the kind that makes you slow your steps without thinking. The streets glistened like fresh paint. Street lamps threw golden light across the wet pavement, and the air smelled like wet leaves and something fresh, as if the whole city had paused to take a deep breath. I was 22. My college diploma was still rolled up in a cardboard tube, lying on the desk of my tiny apartment. I had dreams big enough to fill the sky, but a wallet so light it could float away. That afternoon, I was hurrying to a job interview at a small local magazine. I'd picked my best blouse, the one without stains, and an old black skirt that had seen better days. The weather forecast had promised light showers. Light showers, I thought. I can handle that. But halfway down Elm Street, the sky decided otherwise. A sudden gust of wind flipped my umbrella inside out. It made a sharp thwack, like a startled bird. I tried to twist it back into shape, but the wind was stronger. Cold drops slid down the back of my neck. My hair clung to my cheeks. People walked past without looking. And then a voice. "Here. Take mine." I looked up. He stood there holding out a dark navy umbrella, solid, elegant, the kind that looked like it had never lost a battle with the wind. At first glance, he looked like someone who belonged in a glossy magazine. Neatly pressed suit, polished shoes, a brown leather briefcase in his left hand. His tie had a small crease, as if it had been loosened for comfort, but it made him seem more human. And his eyes, that's what struck me most. They were soft. Not tired. Not weak. Just soft in a way that made you want to trust him. "I'm fine," I said quickly, shaking my head. Rainwater ran from my hair into my collar. "It's not far." He smiled. "You're already wet. You'll be soaked in another minute. Just take it." "What about you?" I asked. He tilted his head toward the shop behind him. "I work right across the street. I'll be inside in 30 seconds. I hesitated, then gave in. The umbrella handle was warm from his hand. It smelled faintly of leather, not the cheap kind but the kind that lasts for years. "Thank you," I said. He gave a small nod, then turned away. I thought that would be the last time I saw him. It wasn't. The rain was still falling after my interview, so I decided to return the umbrella. I pushed open the glass door of the shop he'd gone into earlier. It was a bookstore, the kind with wooden shelves so tall you needed a ladder. The air smelled like paper and dust and coffee from a small corner cafe. He was there at the counter flipping through a notebook. When he looked up and saw me, his face lit up, the kind of smile that feels like sunlight on your skin. "Back so soon," he said. "I'm returning this." I held out the umbrella. "You could have kept it. Consider it a gift." "I don't take gifts from strangers," I said, smiling. "Then I guess we shouldn't be strangers." "I'm Daniel." "Anna," I said. And just like that, the rain outside seemed quieter. We ended up talking for over an hour, sitting in the bookstore cafe. About books. About music. About how we both hated the taste of coffee but loved the smell. He told me about working in publishing. Mostly editing, which is just cleaning up other people's words. I told him about my dream of writing one day, though I didn't say it out loud. I didn't think I was good enough. When I left, he walked me to the door. The rain had stopped, but I had the strange feeling that something had just begun. The first years with Daniel were simple. Maybe that's why they were so beautiful. We rented a tiny apartment with peeling wallpaper and a leaky sink. On rainy nights, the drip-drip from the kitchen became a kind of lullaby. We didn't have much, but we had each other. Somehow that felt like enough. I worked as a receptionist at a small dental clinic. Daniel stayed at the publishing house, reading other people's stories, polishing their words until they shone. Sometimes he'd come home with a little surprise. A chocolate bar, a used paperback, or a single flower he'd picked up from a street vendor. Every time, he'd hand it to me with the same words. "For my girl." We built our life slowly. Our first couch was a hand-me-down from my aunt. Our dining table wobbled because one leg was shorter than the others. We laughed about it, sticking folded cardboard underneath to balance it. When my mother got sick, Daniel was there, driving me to the hospital, bringing me tea when I cried, holding me until I could breathe again. When his company downsized and he lost his job, I was there, making extra sandwiches for him to take to interviews, reminding him that he was more than a job title. We didn't travel the world like we once dreamed. Most nights, our adventure was walking to the grocery store under the streetlights. But he'd still reach for my hand, just like on our very first walk together. And that, to me, was better than Paris or Rome. Years passed. We grew older. We bought a small house. Nothing fancy, but it had a little front yard. Daniel planted roses there, even though he claimed not to know much about gardening. They'll learn to grow, he said, just like we did. Life wasn't perfect, but it was ours. The first sign was small, so small I almost laughed it off. We were in the kitchen making tea. He looked at me and asked, "Do you take sugar?" I laughed. "Daniel, we've been drinking tea together for 20 years. You know I don't take sugar." He laughed too, but there was something in his eyes, a flicker of confusion before it disappeared. Then there were other moments. He'd forget where he left his keys. He called our neighbor Mr. Thompson instead of Mr. Harris. Once he forgot the way to our favorite cafe, the same one we'd been going to for decades. I told myself it was normal. We were getting older. Everyone forgets things sometimes. The day I couldn't ignore it anymore was our 30th anniversary. I wore the red dress he always said made me look like the heroine of a novel. We sat at the table, candles flickering, my favorite wine poured. I raised my glass. "To us, Daniel. 30 years. He smiled, lifted his glass and said, "To Maya." He stopped. His brow furrowed. His lips trembled. Then quietly he asked, "What's your name again?" The sound of my name missing from his mind was louder than any storm. After that night I couldn't pretend anymore. Something was wrong. It wasn't just the name. It was the way he looked at me sometimes, as if he was seeing a face in a crowd trying to place where he knew me from. I told myself I would be strong. I told myself love was enough. But love doesn't stop a mind from slipping away. The days turned into small tests I never wanted to give him. "Daniel, can you pass me the salt?" Some days, he'd hand it to me without hesitation. Other days, his eyes would search the table as if salt was a word from another language. I began writing things down for him, sticky notes on the fridge, labels on drawers. At first, he laughed about it, said I was making the kitchen look like a crime scene. But soon, he depended on them. I'd watch him read the notes out loud, his lips moving slowly, as if each word was a fragile thing he had to hold carefully. One morning, I found him in the backyard, staring at the rose bushes he had planted years ago. "They're beautiful," I said. He turned to me and smiled. "My wife loves roses. I think she planted these." It felt like the air had been punched out of my chest. I didn't correct him. I just nodded and said, "Yes, she loves them very much." Our evenings used to be full of stories. We'd talk for hours about books, about the people we saw on the street, about dreams we'd never chased but liked to imagine. Now the silence between us grew. Some nights he'd just sit and watch the wall, his hands folded neatly in his lap. I'd try to start conversations, tell him about the neighbor's new dog, or the song I'd heard on the radio, but sometimes he would only smile politely, like I was a stranger making small talk. Once I asked him if he remembered the first time we met in the rain. His brow furrowed deeply, and for a moment I thought the memory was returning. But then he shook his head and said, "I don't think we've met before. Are you a friend of the family?" The knife of those words cut deeper than anything I could have imagined. I wanted to scream, to shake him until he remembered. Instead, I reached for his hand and said, "Yes, I'm your friend." Because in that moment, being his friend was the only way to still be close to him. The day it happened started like any other. I made breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast, and tea. He ate quietly. I kissed his forehead before going to hang laundry in the yard. When I came back inside, he was gone. The front door was open, swinging gently in the breeze. His shoes were missing. Panic punched through my chest. I ran outside calling his name. I searched the street, the park, even the small grocery store down the block. Finally, I found him 2 streets over, sitting on a bench, staring at the road. "Daniel!" I cried, running toward him. "You scared me." He looked up, puzzled. "I'm sorry, miss. Are you looking for someone?" It was in that moment I realized he had left me long before his body ever would. The doctors confirmed what I had already feared. Alzheimer's. The word felt heavy in my mouth, like it would never go away. I cared for him as best I could. Bathed him. Fed him. Helped him dress. Some days he called me Anna. Some days I was that nice nurse. And some days I was no one at all. One afternoon, as I read to him from his favorite book, though I doubt he recognized it, he reached for my hand. His grip was weak but steady. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" I asked. "For staying." My heart broke and healed all at once. He never fully came back to me. The man I had given my years to was gone piece by piece. But in the quiet moments when his eyes softened or his fingers curled around mine, I knew that somewhere deep inside he still loved me, even if he couldn't remember my name. And that was enough for me to stay until the end. Love is often painted as a bright, everlasting flame. We imagine it surviving storms, distance, and time. We picture old couples holding hands on park benches, smiling at shared memories. But rarely do we talk about what happens when those memories begin to fade. Not because the love is gone, but because the mind that once held them is slowly slipping away. In this story, we followed a woman who gave decades of her life to a man named Daniel. She loved him through the ordinary days, through the joyful ones, and eventually through the most painful days of all, the days when he no longer remembered who she was. There's a particular kind of grief that comes with Alzheimer's and memory loss. It is not like the sudden grief of losing someone to an accident, where one day they are here and the next day they are gone. It's slower, quieter, more cruel in a way, because you lose them piece by piece. You lose the way they say your name. You lose the inside jokes that only the two of you understood. You lose the stories you've told each other 100 times, until one day, you are the only one who remembers them at all. The woman in this story faced a choice every single day. Do I keep correcting him, forcing him to remember who I am, knowing it might confuse or upset him? Or do I meet him where he is, even if it means being a friend, a nurse, or a stranger in his eyes? She chose the second path. And that choice says more about love than any perfect, memory-filled marriage could ever say. It takes a rare kind of strength to keep giving when you receive so little in return. It takes patience to sit in the silence where conversation used to live. It takes courage to face each day, knowing that tomorrow might take another part of the person you love. And perhaps most of all, it takes humility to let go of the need to be remembered, simply because you want to keep being there for them. Some might wonder, why stay when the person you loved is gone in all but body? But here's the truth, the love was real. The years they shared were real. Even if the memories faded for him, they didn't fade for her. She carried them every moment, every laugh, every kiss in the rain. Her love wasn't dependent on his memory. It existed on its own, steadfast, unshaken, quietly fierce. When Daniel said, "Thank you for staying," it might have been a flicker of recognition, or it might have been just gratitude for a kind presence. But for her it was enough. Enough to know that on some level he still felt safe with her. Enough to keep holding on, even as he drifted further away. This story also reminds us that love is not always about being seen. Sometimes it's about seeing the other person fully even when they can't see you in return. It's about showing up, again and again. Not because it's easy, but because it's right for your heart. We don't often think about this kind of love when we're young. We think of grand gestures, romantic nights, shared adventures. But one day, for many of us, love will mean showing up to wash someone's hands, to feed them when they forget how, to remind them gently where they are. It's not glamorous. It's not a movie scene. But it's real. And in its own way, it's even more beautiful. This story asks us to reflect. If the person you loved forgot your name, your face, your shared life, would you still stay? Would you still care for them with the same tenderness? Would you still see the soul beneath the broken memory? There is no right answer. Some might not have the strength. Some might not choose to stay. But for those who do, their love is a testament to the deepest kind of commitment a human heart can give. And so, as this story ends, perhaps we can carry one simple truth with us. The measure of love is not how it begins, but how it endures when everything else falls away.